So I do not like that I'm having to record this, but somehow peeps be blaming peeps. Fans be blaming refs, and it's not okay. It's way too much nowadays, and it's getting worse and worse. Literally, after every single game, you will see fans blaming referees. And by the way, it's usually, I wonder why this is. It's usually the losing team's fans that you see out the woodwork complaining. And I'm going to give recent examples of games. I'm going to give less recent examples of games. Everything is not okay. But it's also ironic that some of it's contradictory, where you'll have some of the same teams that are suddenly complaining about the referees, that griped about other teams complaining against the referees when they were winning games. So, anyways, the main point of this is actually to point out how officiating has not gotten worse. It's not gotten better. It's always been what it's been. It's been humans on doing a job that make errors. That's simply what it is. At the end of the day, bias aside, technology aside, etc., these are humans that are simply making mistakes at their jobs. Okay, so there's a couple reasons, though, that I feel like officiating nowadays has been magnified more than it has been, and I'll get into that. But to start with, again, my overall premise of officiating forever and always has been play well enough to not let officials decide the game. Point blank. Regardless of the sport, regardless of the contest, you need to play well enough to not let officials decide a game. Whether it's football, basketball, baseball, bowling. Bowling's a really bad example. I don't really understand how officials do not decide bowling. You decide bowling, right? But maybe we should treat it all like bowling. Okay, cool. We understand going into a game that we're subject to humans making errors because humans are officials. That's just it. So shame on you if you are that fan or group of fans that are blaming referees after a game because that's the reason that you lost. No, shame on you. That's basically you saying, I didn't realize that going into the game, there was human beings that were going to decide these things in this game. So I need to do my part. My team needs to do my part well enough to make sure that they're not the ones that cost us this game at the end of this game. But you are. So again, shame on you. And no. Don't get in the comments and talk about, well, bias this, bias that, etc. The refs want this team to win or somebody pit. No, absolutely not. That stuff doesn't exist. This is sports. It has existed before, but it's not like an every game thing. And that's the thing. That's the thing is like every single game, somebody's like, oh, this person paid those refs. This person paid those refs. No, that's not a usual thing. That doesn't happen against Georgia, Tennessee, just using a recent example. LSU, South Carolina didn't happen then too. Sorry. It doesn't happen. Again, play well enough to not let the refs decide the game. I do think that we all see more and more. It's like after every game, players and fans, not really players, but fans blaming the referees for deciding the game, right? And there's a couple reasons, I think. Number one, every game is now broadcast on television versus before in the 80s, 90s, 70s, 60s, and before that, prior. Maybe, especially back then, you had one game televised each week on ESPN or whatever that network was, CBS, etc., right? Maybe one or two. I was a kid going to games, and my parents had season tickets to Syracuse football in the 90s, and the coolest thing about going to the games was they had a top 25 ticker that does still exist in stadiums, right? You see it if you're live in a stadium with the scores of all the top 25 games. Nowadays, people really don't pay attention that much because you got your smartphones and internet in the stadium usually, where you can just see the scores live if you are in the game. Well, back in the day, that was the only way that you could get information about any other game. My point being, there was no games broadcast on TV. So the only way that you saw the game that you were at is if you were live at that game, most likely. unless it happened to be one of the 2 or 3 that were broadcast. You got in the 90s, and yeah, there was a few more games broadcast, but there wasn't at all the amount of games broadcast on TV that there is nowadays. The second thing on top of that is, even with those games, there was not the same amount of camera angles that there was nowadays. So maybe ESPN had 2 or 3 camera angles at the game. Now you got the Sky Cam, you got this, you got that, especially for the higher profile games, right, that they're broadcasting. Like, for example, LSU South Carolina earlier this year, Bama, Tennessee, Georgia, Tennessee, like all these games have 20,000 camera angles, higher budgets, etc., right? So now you got fans that are able to nitpick, well, I saw from this angle that was at this and this and this. Also, you have the technology to be able to slow down these camera angles. When refs are making these calls, they're making them live on the field, in action. That's hard. Any job is hard. So when you sit there watching Alex Rodriguez back in the day, or Manny Ramirez, I'm just shouting that out because Netflix did a pretty cool documentary on the Red Sox 2004, I think 3 comeback, whatever. I'm a Yankees fan, so. But anyways, you see these guys, Mike Trout, right, more present day, or Bryce Harper, like cranking home runs off 95-mile-an-hour fastballs when you're watching it on TV, and it looks simple, right? It ain't simple. What those guys are doing ain't simple. What the umpires behind the plate are doing is not simple. Trying to determine if it's a striker ball on a 95-mile-an-hour fastball, if something's a check swing live in real time. In football, if it's a pass interference live in real time. That's not easy. That's not easy. So we have the benefit, though, like I said, of 50,000 different camera angles. So that's the why behind this. I feel like people are magnifying, or able to magnify these calls more, as I saw this on the Sky Cam. Did the ref see it on the Sky Cam? No. The ref saw it from here to here on the field, and it's going a million miles a minute. That's how the ref saw it, and that's how they see it. And there's also instant replay now. That did not exist back in the 80s and 90s. I think it came into existence, 15, 20 years ago? It started in the NFL, and then college adopted it, or maybe it was vice versa. I don't remember. Few decades now, that's been a thing, but it hasn't always been a thing. So now we sit here and we dissect because we have replay. Replay insinuates, the officials aren't good enough. That's the mindset that everybody has adopted because of this replay. Well, we needed it because the refs aren't good enough. It's a good thing, but at the same time, like, it magnifies the human error to make people think, well, that's suddenly not okay. No, it's okay. They're human. It's what it's been for decades, forever. But again, we just magnify into thinking, nope, the ref messed up. And the other thing is technology nowadays, right? Social media specifically. You know how many times where do you see all this stuff about people complaining about games consistently nowadays? Because it is the thing. It's on social media. The first thing I see when I open my phone this morning is Tennessee fans saying this and screenshotting this, and they called this on Georgia and not on this. And early in the game, I saw the opposite. I saw Georgia fans griping about calls against Tennessee fans, because you're able to watch this stuff at a slower pace because every game is now broadcast, and they also have 50 different cameras instead of 2 different cameras. Back in the 90s and the 80s, etc., you saw the report of the game after with maybe one still photo in the newspaper, right? There was no social media, there was no Facebook, there was no Twitter, there was no Instagram where you could go and see, holy cow, the ref missed that call. No, it's holy cow, the ref missed that call. My point is, it's going a million miles a minute for them in the field. Give them some grace. They're human like you and I are. Like, I've used these analogies before in my videos and my tweets and in my YouTubes. But like, if you're a cashier and you give the wrong change, that's a human error. If you're an accountant and you make an error on a spreadsheet with a wrong formula, that's an error. If you're an HR professional and you quote the wrong benefits information for an employee, that's an error. Like, that's allowed. Like, it's not great, but it's allowed. It's understood because we're humans. Referees make mistakes. They are human beings. They're trying to get it right. If you see them on airplanes or anything, they are literally like sitting there laser focused on their craft, studying their laptops, studying video, trying to get these calls right. They're paid to do it. It's a job for them. It's a part-time job, but it's a job. So anyways, I say all this just to say, like, give them some grace and don't be that person that sits there blaming the officials, A, and saying officiating has gotten worse over the years, B. No, officiating hasn't gotten worse. It's the same as it's always been. We just have a we have a vast number of resources now at our disposal, including social media, where we can see the 50,000 different angles and pictures, etc. Whatever we want to use to spin a narrative against our team didn't play well enough and we lost the game because of the officials. It didn't used to be like that. Do you remember, if you were around back in the 80s, 70s, 90s? I was around in the 90s. That's the earliest I remember football at the college and pro level. In the 2000s. Even then, if you think back and you were around that long, and if you weren't, I'll tell you, that stuff, that complaining, that constant after every game did not exist. And it's not simply because officials are worse than they used to be. It's not. I'm sorry, it's not. It's because of all this technology, the media exposure, etc., and this viral just people feeding off of each other, blame the refs type of mentality that exists nowadays. That's where it stems from. It's nothing to do with these officials getting worse. If anything, give these officials credit because the athletes are bigger, faster, stronger nowadays. But we're not. We're doing the opposite because technology has spoiled us. Spoiled us so hard. I guarantee these officials sit there and say, I wish social media didn't exist. I wish technology didn't exist. Because all it does is magnify their calls that are the same ones they were making in the 70s, in the 80s, where there was no camera angles, where maybe there was a still shot that a photographer caught on the sideline of a guy celebrating a touchdown and that was it. They weren't capturing the holding calls that did happen that they missed because they're human. The pass interference calls that happened that they missed because they're human. I can tell you a personal example. I think we were playing Michigan in Syracuse, and there was a missed call I distinctly remember as a kid late in that game that you could argue cost Syracuse the game. But you weren't at that game. You don't remember that because that was in freaking 2000. Social media didn't exist. Technology didn't exist, etc. Right? That's my point. Like, these things always have happened. They've always existed. Human error has always been a thing. It's not the officials' faults, guys. We need to understand it's technology. It's the numerous camera angles. It's just the unrealistic expectations. And we just sit there like, oh, I could have called that. I could have done that. No, you have the benefit of not watching the player at full speed on the field, the receiver running, 12 to 20 miles an hour, however they're fast they are, and the official trying to do that in real time. That's a hard freaking job. Again, give them some credit. Don't keep shaming them. If anything, shame your own team, again, for not playing well enough to not let the officials decide the game on the field. A recent example, I'll get into those now that I've seen, is, Florida State baseball. Remember this past year, I sounded off on that before on X, but there was a check swing call, and Florida State fans in baseball, it was part of the College World Series, the initial games, and they played Tennessee, and Florida State fans were up in arms because that call led to Tennessee eventually winning the game. And that call would have essentially ended the game in a lot of people's minds. And Florida State fans were griping, it was the wrong call, etc. It absolutely was, but it was an individual call in a 9-inning game, and you had given up 9 runs before that to allow yourself to be put in that situation. That's my point. Like, there's a lot of things that add up. It's not just like, oh, the baseball game started in the 8th or 9th inning whenever that call happened. No, it started in the 1st inning. And until that point, fast forward to the 8th or 9th inning, and that time you had given up 8 or 9 runs. Okay, cool. So if you had given up half that amount, that check swing call wouldn't have even mattered. But now you want to magnify it because of your mistakes before that, your errors. In this Tennessee-Georgia game that just happened, Georgia won. They showed out in the second half. Shout out to Kirby Smart, the king of adjustments. I should have seen it coming. Shame on me for not realizing it again. But that's where, for me, it starts and stops. Kirby Smart, go dog, shout out, king of adjustments. I thought Tennessee would win that game. What I was really disappointed in seeing when I woke up this morning is Tennessee blaming the referees here, there, and everywhere. Yeah, I agree. They made mistakes. That 12 men on the field call was bad. But it doesn't negate the fact that you allowed 31 points to the Georgia Bulldogs. It doesn't negate the fact that Oscar Delp had 2 touchdowns and he's not Brock Bowers. So you were tied at halftime too, 17-17. Again, play well enough to not let the officials decide the game. And this is just one fan base, but it is ironic because you're shaming Florida State fans in baseball and saying, well, they shouldn't have had a gripe. And I agree with you. They shouldn't have had a gripe. I just said that. But now on the counter, oh, we have a gripe. It's essentially what you're saying by posting all this stuff out on social media. Like blaming the referees like that. I don't care if it's a different sport. It's a sport. It's contradictory. You need to realize that it's human error. That's human error. It's nothing more. Nothing more. Bama fans. I'm using Tennessee again. It's not that I'm hating on them. It's just you're relevant. Shout out. Danny White's amazing. This is different sports. Tennessee's being talked about in high-profile games. It's actually a testament to your university. So don't think that I'm hating on you. It's just the recency with Georgia, the recency you made the College World Series with Florida State, and it worked out in the pro for you, and it should have. Bama 2022, another prominent game because Tennessee's on the rise under Heupel in football. Remember, Bama had 12 interceptions in that game. One that was magnified by Bama fans, though, was that Kool-Aid McKinstry call late in the game. Was it a pass interference? Was it not? It would have essentially ended the game. Instead, it was called a pass interference because it was an interception by Kool-Aid, if you don't remember, which Bama would have gotten the ball and ended the game. Instead, they said it was pass interference. They gated the interception. Tennessee still had the ball. Eventually, Tennessee wins that game 52-49 in Neyland. And I think it was their first win under beating Saban, like ended a long streak. Super cool atmosphere. They won the game, right? Bama fans are sitting there griping about that Kool-Aid call. No, gripe about your team and the 11 penalties before it, and that's the reason that you lost the game. You didn't play well enough. You had a Pete Golding defense that allowed 52 points in that game. That's the reason you lost. You need to go into that game understanding, we are subject to a potential bad call, if you want to call it that, late in the game. Borderline call. Controversial call late in the game. So we need to have a 20-point lead going into that play or part of the game where that could happen. Now, if it does happen, 7-point swing at max that could cost you. Doesn't cost you. Exhibit the Kool-Aid McKinstry penalty. What if you played well enough so Tennessee's down 2 scores, 17, 20 points, and that call happens? We're not talking about that call like we are now, are we? That's my thing. Officials are going to make mistakes. So if you're sitting here blaming those calls to me, that means that you're not being fair. And you're basically saying, I don't understand that officials are human beings, that they're going to make mistakes. Like, that's just it. So we got more camera angles at games. We have every game now being magnified, quite frankly, in every sport. We have social media that exists. We have technology that's allowed camera angles to be in higher resolution and slow things down. All of these things, folks, contribute to why officiating seemingly is worse. It's not worse. The amount of resources we have now are way more than the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. Facebook came around in 2004, 2005. Even when that came around, 2003, I think. Even when that came around, it wasn't anything like it was. You could write on somebody's wall. You weren't posting graphics and videos and slow imaging and overhead shots of what happened in football games. That stuff's actually come around basically since X and beyond. Instagram, all that stuff. So need to put it in perspective that it's really not officials being worse. Officials are still human beings. They have extremities and minds and capability to run and walk and move certain ways just like they always have. It is what it is. So everybody have a good day. Just wanted to sound off on that, and that's my take on officiating. Play well enough to not let the refs decide the game and understand that it's not that refs have gotten worse, it's that technology has gotten better. There's more camera angles, there are so many more resources, and stuff just feeds into each other. Like a lot of different things in life beyond sports too, right? You hear one thing and then it just goes viral on social media. And the trend nowadays and the easy out is, oh, let's just blame it on the refs. South Carolina LSU, another example. Let's just blame it on the refs. No, blame it on yourselves, not playing well enough to not let the refs decide that game. Saw some LSU fans too. Recent example. They lost to Florida. Saw some LSU fans on social media blaming refs. That's interesting because Florida had some missed calls too, but they can't blame the refs? That's my point. Humans are humans on both sides. They're going to make mistakes. So follow me here, subscribe to the channel, like the video if you like it, don't if you don't. Curate your content. You know, I'm not here to be like sunshine and rainbows. I just really enjoy doing this. And if you truly don't like content of any kind on anybody's channel or social media stream or, Netflix or Hulu or whatever, dislike it. That's how we help each other. That's how you help yourself. And your media experience is going to be more enjoyable for it. Socializing how you want to socialize will be more beneficial for it. So please like, though, hopefully, right? If you like this, that'll help you like more stuff, even if it's not mine. So comment your thoughts in the comments if you'd like to. And then the other thing is X. Yeah, follow me. The handle is @PigskinPD. Always posting fun stuff there. So everybody have a good day.